besides getting feedback from people around you, your spouse, besides maybe starting to create more stillness in your life, more quiet time to listen to yourself and what's actually going on inside, which I think is one of the tools that I use. What other tools can you recommend to guys who might be
Right.
wanting to
Right.
understand what's actually going on with them?
Yeah.
What's causing their suffering? Yeah.
Yeah. So generally I'm going to suggest that there are three sort of pathways. One of them is sort of a behavioral pathway. So a behavioral pathway would be more understanding what those triggers are, making some different choices, sort of like the whole idea of the moments of truth in your operating system. Okay. So self-awareness, choice, accountability, that's just sort of like typical cognitive behavioral approach to change, Sean. Okay. So that is a general pathway, and there's some tools in that. Okay. So that's number one.
Yeah, great.
Second pathway, I would say, would be more of a psychodynamic approach to change. And really what we're talking about there is what we talked about before, Sean, which is understanding your core dynamic, your core attachment map, and realizing that there are these themes in your life that are driving your activity and behavior, and starting to look into those, breathe into them, start to try to dissipate some of that energy, to give it less of a life in driving your behavior. So that's more of a sort of psychological approach to changing your path. Okay. So cognitive, behavioral, and I'd say the third one is what you were talking about, which is more of a spiritual path. So for example, through meditation, through listening to great masters talk about sort of mastering, yourself. Some of the people I study are, some of Paramahansa Yogananda was sort of the yogi that I studied with. He started the Self-Realization Fellowship. And, I learned how to meditate. I learned how to take more responsibility for my life. There's a whole tool set. Another person in that realm that I really like a lot is Michael Singer, who wrote a book, a New York Times bestseller called talk basically about the untethering yourself from your soul.
The untethered soul. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that the answer to your question lies in there are tools and ways of thinking about the world and changing yourself in a cognitive sort of behavioral approach, a spiritual approach, and a more psychodynamic approach. Everything else, in my opinion, would be more sort of like a wet finger in the air saying, well, I heard this thing, I think I'll try this. It's sort of like, yeah, I'll try that. It would be sort of like dealing with the symptoms through some more tactical things that I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not really going to get at the sort of core dynamic. And what I'm finding for myself, Sean, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use all three of those, because I think that it's sort of like the old game of Pac-Man. You got to get more power. So you get more power when you bring more of those into your life. So that's what I'm working on with people. I'm working on with, if they're willing to go a deeper level, I had a friend of mine brilliant person who, was trying to fix everything through a cognitive approach. It wasn't enough. She finally made a decision to go into a more psychodynamic approach. And now she's really having great success.